Do you guys remember this case? This was January of 2024. And when it first came out, they were found out behind this guy's house. They had gone over to their friend's house to watch the game. And when they didn't return home, their loved ones started asking questions, went looking for him, went over to this guy's house, banged on the outside of his door. He wouldn't answer. So I guess somebody got creative and said, well, I'm going to go check around the back. And that's when they found them. All three of these guys were found behind the house, deceased. So the families have been pushing for a year now to find for something to happen in this case. And it looks like finally something has. Now, to back up a little bit, this occurred early January. According to the New York Post, Jordan Willis, who was the homeowner and supposed friend of these men, checked himself into rehab following his friend's death outside his home. I think it was drug and alcohol, not just drugs. I mean, he literally, when the cops arrived to ask about the deceased men on the back of his porch, he was wearing underwear and holding a glass of wine. And he claimed to have been asleep for nearly 2 days, so he did not realize his friends were unalive outside. So they did the toxicology report. The families have been all over the media because they felt like things just weren't happening fast enough in this case. They finally, this month, have made arrests. And I guess, not surprisingly, Willis is one of the men that has been arrested. And guess what, everyone? Fentanyl. Well, here, I'll just let you guys watch the press conference.
I am Prosecuting Attorney Eric Zahn. With me is Kansas City Police Chief Stacey Graves, Deputy Chief Doug Niemeyer, Detective Philip Sipple, and Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Colin Van Ostern. We're here today to announce charges against two men for drug distribution and manslaughter in the deaths of Clayton McGeaney, David Harrington, and Ricky Johnson. These three men were found dead outside a Platte County home on January 9, 2024. Today, Jordan Willis and Ivory Carson have been charged with distribution of a controlled substance and 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter. This case has received considerable attention from the media, and I think some people seem to believe that charges may never be brought in this case. People may have doubted this investigation because it has spanned more than a year. But understand this, the Kansas City Police Department and my office do not rest on homicide cases until we have exhausted every possible resource to bring anybody we believe responsible to justice. Today's charges are the product of hard work of Kansas City detectives and prosecutors over those many months. Let me summarize the probable cause statement in this case, and we will have copies of the charging documents, including the entire probable cause statement for you after our statements here. As I've mentioned, Clayton McGeaney, David Harrington, and Ricky Johnson were found dead outside defendant Jordan Willis's home in the 5200 block of Northwest 83rd Terrace in the Platte County portion of Kansas City on January 9. Mr. McGeaney's fiancée told police that Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Harrington, and Mr. Johnson had gone to Mr. Willis's home to watch the Kansas City Chiefs football game on January 7th. When she could not contact Mr. McGeaney, she went back to the home on January 9th and found at least one person dead on the back patio. Temperatures had dropped below freezing the night of the Chiefs game. Officers with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department responded to that scene and found Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Harrington, and Mr. Johnson's bodies in the backyard of the home. Detectives then obtained consent to search the home. They found 2 plastic bags containing white powdery substances. The bags were tested by the Kansas City, Missouri Police Crime Laboratory. One of those bags contained cocaine, and the probable cause statement alleges that Mr. Willis was determined to be the major contributor of DNA found on that bag. The other bag contained fentanyl, and the probable cause statement alleges that Mr. Carson was determined to be the major contributor of DNA on that bag. The probable cause statement also recounts the statement of a witness who said he was at Mr. Harrington's home with Mr. Harrington, Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Johnson, and the defendant, Mr. Willis, the night of the football game, where he saw a large plate of cocaine allegedly supplied by Mr. Willis that everyone was using. The witness said Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Harrington, Mr. Johnson were going to Mr. Willis's home after the football game. Another witness said he was with Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Harrington, Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Willis at Willis's home later that night on January 7th, where they drank, smoked marijuana, and used cocaine. That witness left shortly before midnight. Data recovered from Mr. Harrington's phone allegedly contains text messages between Mr. Harrington, Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Willis, the defendant, Mr. Carson, and others consistent with the purchase and use of cocaine. The messages allegedly indicate that Mr. Carson supplied Mr. Harrington with cocaine. A doctor with Forensic Medical of Kansas found that Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Harrington, and Mr. Johnson all died of fentanyl and cocaine combined toxicity. Mr. Willis and Mr. Carson are both charged with a single count of delivery of a controlled substance and 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter for recklessly causing the deaths of Mr. McGeaney, Mr. Harrington, and Mr. Johnson. Each of those charges carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Mr. Carson is in the Platte County Jail in lieu of a $100,000 cash bond. We have been told that Mr. Willis is going to surrender himself on the warrant issued for his arrest and that he will post a $100,000 cash bond. This case is a tragic reminder of the dangers of street drugs. But make no mistake, the people who supply those drugs can and will be held accountable when people overdose. I again want to thank the men and women of the Kansas City Police Department for their tireless work on this case, as well as Mr. Van Ostren standing here with me and First Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Mark Gibson. All of these folks were intimately involved in this investigation from day one. I should caution you that the charges against Mr. Willis and Mr. Carson are merely accusations, and they are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Let me turn things over now to Chief Graves for a few additional comments.
The charges here today are a message for not only those who are grieving the lives of their loved ones who were lost to, in this case, the fentanyl, to know that the members of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department do not give up on these investigations. While this happened a year ago, our detectives continue to work on this case to get it to the point that we're at today, where charges are filed. In addition to that, this is a message to those that are bringing fentanyl into our communities, providing it to people, harming our community, that you will be held accountable, you will be arrested, and you will be charged.
Ooh, I like her. She is to the point and no fuss. Get right to it. Yeah, this is sad. And what really sucks about this, guys, is that if they hadn't have been doing any of these drugs, this wouldn't have happened. The drugs weren't forced upon them. And that's really unfortunate. I thought I saw, now I don't know if this was a rumor or not, but I thought I saw something about the fact that these 3 guys never really hung out with this guy, Willis guy. And the only reason that they were kind of hanging at his house that night was because it was like a place to go and he always had beer and other things, I guess. I thought they were talking about just beer, but apparently it was more than just beer. But these 2 have been arrested. The homeowner is Willis. He's on the right-hand side in this image. So I don't know. Will we see this go to court? Maybe. I guess if we do, we'll follow it. It just depends on what else falls at that time period. But I did want to give you guys an update on it because I had kind of been waiting around to see what was going to happen, and I thought maybe you guys were too. So I appreciate you watching, and y'all be good. Until next time.